Good morning, everybody. My name's Jeff Stein. I'm with Voya, and today we're going to be talking about what we're calling estate planning for everyone. But we're going to make it a little simpler than estate planning. It's kind of, I don't have an estate, that's only for rich people, right? Estate is nothing more than stuff, and we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, has anybody in here had somebody die in their family, a parent, a grandparent, something like that, that they had to actually deal with the stuff that they had left? Well, I have people that do that all the time, and it's probably one of the more difficult jobs that are out there. So I want to put you into a position by the end of this meeting where you have set yourself up so that things are going to happen when you do die, and you will, and also set it up so that future generations can take advantage or be in a much better place because of the steps that you've taken. So that's me. I've been doing this for 33 years now. I've heard a lot, I've done a lot as it would relate to financial services, etc. But I am not an attorney and I'm not an accountant, so I don't want you to be holding me out there as giving you legal advice or accounting advice. I'm just going to give you kind of some wisdom that I've accumulated over the years. Now, I'm with Voya, as is Dana in the back, and we are very fortunate to be able to offer you your deferred compensation here at Minnetonka. And as I believe Dana will be here for the rest of today, and she's available to answer your questions or to get you started in the program. All right, so we're going to be doing some different things here. First of all, why does estate planning matter? So we're going to talk about that. Is this really an important thing? Two, I want to talk to you about getting yourselves organized, and not necessarily for yourselves, but for other people. Because, in a lot of cases, for example, at my house, Jean, my wife, is the one who said, I don't know half the stuff we've got going on. We've got to get this kind of organized here. And so, what did I do to make that happen? And we're going to cover kind of three basics, which is life insurance, a power of attorney, a last will and testament. Those are kind of spooky things. I want to demystify them so that you have a much greater comfort level as to what they are, how they work, and probably why you want to have something like it. And last is creating a plan. So how do we then take all these different pieces that we'll have talked about and put it all together? And an important piece is that some of you may be do-it-yourselfers, and that's fine. I've actually pulled a couple documents off of the internet for you to see what they actually look like. But, as far as I'm concerned, what I do well, I do really well. And other things, I look for other people to help me. So I want to find an attorney who's going to help me put together a will. I want to find an accountant, for example, who's going to help me make good financial decisions as it would relate to taxes and things like that. So getting help is not a bad thing. I want to demystify getting help from those professionals. It's not this big, expensive unknown. So I want you to be able to walk into this with a big comfort level as to what's going on. All right, so let's start with why it matters. All right, so a lot of people think estate planning is only for the rich. That's wrong. Estate planning is for everybody. If you are single and you die, what happens to your stuff? And I know the easy answer is, well, I don't care, I'm not here anymore, right? All right, but that's the wrong answer. Because what's going to happen is that stuff has got to be distributed. So if I were to take one of you in this room and say, what do you have? It might be I've got a pension, I've got Social Security benefits, I've got maybe some deferred compensation, and maybe I've saved some other money. Potentially I have a car, maybe I own a home. What about all the stuff in that home? Things like that. By the way, an idea you can steal if you want. One of my great ideas is homes should be built on hydraulics so that after your parents have moved out, you can just tilt the house to one side and everything gets put into a dumpster. It's just one of those easy home cleaning types of ideas. I haven't seen anybody do it yet, but I think we could do really well with it. But estate planning is for everybody. What do I want to have happen to my stuff? If I'm married, what happens to my stuff? Does everything go to my wife? Is that a great idea? What about, some of you may be married for a second time here. Some of you may just live with somebody else. There are all kinds of implications here that we want to be touching on. So what happens? So who's going to get your savings? What do I want to have happen to that stuff? In a lot of cases, it'll all go to my wife. Well, maybe, unfortunately, something has happened and you and your wife have both died. Well, is it appropriate? And by the way, because I work with so many people, and I've worked with so many people over the years, what happens is that in a lot of families, I find that this is not a typical, and I'm dating myself, Leave It to Beaver type of family, where everybody is just happy and healthy and things like that. In many families, there are special needs. In other families, there are things where one of the children, for example, has a problem. It might be a chemical problem. It might be a spending problem, things like that. How do you protect these people from themselves? I would be concerned about that, and I want to put you into a position where that you can take the appropriate steps. Do you have a blended family? So is this a second marriage? Do I want the kids from the first marriage fighting with the family members from the second marriage about, no, this dad wanted me to have this, or why do you have a right to that? We've got to get these things clean. Otherwise, you are just creating chaos for the people that you've left behind. Do you know who's going to look after your children? So some of you may have kids. All right. In my house, it was a huge debate as to, well, should it be one of my brothers or sister? And my wife was very uncomfortable with that. And I know this is being taped, so this is probably going to be seen by maybe people I know. But the bottom line is that we felt that Jean's very best friend would be a more appropriate individual to take care of our kids if something happened. And we took it a step further. We said, well, we want to make sure that there's money in place to make that happen. So we purchased some life insurance, just simple term, insurance that was only set for a certain period of time. But if we were to die during that period of time, there'd be money to take care of our kids. There'd be money for them to be able to go on to college, things like that. And the last thing, and this is not necessarily the last thing, but how many people think about what's going to happen to my pet? So we have Ted. What's going to happen to Ted? Ted the dog. That's a new concern. Now, many years ago, there was a famous heiress who, his dog was left millions of dollars. I don't know if that's an appropriate outcome, but at the same time, do you want one of your children? Will one of your friends take the pet? Things like that. So just things that I want you to consider. So what if you don't have a will? Who gets what? That's the question, because is anybody here willing to admit that they don't have a will? All right, there's at least a couple, 3 hands. All right, no will? Well, actually, you do have a will. The state of Minnesota says you've got a will. So I've done a little research, and let's see if I can find it very quickly here as to who gets what. But the bottom line is that when you don't have a will, it's passed down on a succession basis to a spouse, to children, to stepchildren, to first nieces, first nephews, things like that. Is that what you want? We want it to be set up in the most efficient way possible. We want it to be set up to work exactly as you want it. And as I'd indicated earlier, is it appropriate that monies go to certain places that maybe you're uncomfortable having those dollars go to. So first question on a quiz here. What if you don't have a will? Who determines who gets what? Is it your wife or your spouse? I shouldn't be necessarily assuming that it's a wife. Your parents, your attorney, your state. Some people think it is your attorney. It's not. The answer is your state. The state of Minnesota, as I said earlier, is deciding who gets what. Well, what if you don't have a will? Who's going to take care of the kids? All right, so think about it. Do you like your mother-in-law? Do you like your father-in-law? Does your spouse, does he or she like your parents? There's always something there. But believe me, both are going to be fighting with each other probably to see who takes over. And what about that brother or sister who thinks they're the best choice? Is that what you want to be taking place here? It's really a bad thing going on anyways, and I want to make sure that you're in a position so that these things happen the way you want. An attorney that I use, brilliant kid, Wharton School of Business, Columbia School of Law, travels all over the world doing estate planning, things like that for people. And he and his brother first lost their father to cancer, and a year later lost their mother to cancer. Now the parents had taken steps, and I don't know how they were so wise to have put themselves into this position, but had named who was going to take care of the children, and they had set aside funds that allowed them both to go to schools. The other one went to a very prestigious school out in New York. And they're both very happy and healthy kids. But these things happen. How do you put yourself into a position where the right thing is going to be taking place? And what's the definition of right? It's your definition of right. Don't let it be the definition of the courts. Don't let it be the definition of the strongest personality in your family, things like that. It should be your decision. So next question, if you don't have a will, who's going to take care of your children? Is it going to be your parents? Is it going to be your spouse? Is it going to be the court? Is it going to be your attorney? Well, again, the answer here is the courts. They're going to decide. I don't want the courts deciding. I want to decide. Maybe that's my personality, but I'm going to really push strongly to try to put you into a position where this is taken care of. So name a guardian for your children, or the court's going to do it for you. And don't forget to update it. Gene's best friend moves out of town. Well, we don't want the kids, if we're both gone, to move out of town because this person's the guardian. We have to refresh things to make sure that we're still taking care of what needs to be taken care of. People get sick. People's relationships change. Is that appropriate? People go through divorce. So you've got your sister picked out and her husband and her get a divorce. Is that still appropriate that she's now the guardian of your kids? I'm just doing the types of conversations that if you sit down with an attorney, they're going to be asking you the same thing. Who do you want to be the guardian of your kids? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And this is not a one and done. It's like the person, and for all of you, I'd like you to, after this, to go back to your desks, and I'm not sure how you check it out, but probably through benefits. Who's my beneficiary on my deferred comp if I have it? Who's my beneficiary on my para? Who's my beneficiary on my life insurance if I have some through work? Things like that, or if I have private life insurance. And go and find that out. I cannot tell you, well, I will tell you that 3 to 4 times a year, we have a beneficiary claim where the beneficiary is no longer a relationship of that individual. Could have been a boyfriend, girlfriend, could have been a spouse, that they're now divorced, things like that. These beneficiary designations have been in place, many years ago, but never updated. Stay on top of this stuff. It's really important. What do we have here? A little over half of Americans don't have a will. Now, I did not bring a will. Again, I do have that intestate, which is just a fancy way of saying I don't have a will here. So what does Minnesota decide? If you die with children and no spouse, the children inherit everything. Is that a good thing? All right, so you've got an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and you've got $100,000. Is that a good thing that each of those kids gets 50 grand? Now, on the surface, the answer is yeah, it's really nice. But I remember when I was 18 years old, and that was a long time ago. But nonetheless, I'm thinking, gee, do I want that red Corvette or the blue Corvette? Now, that was back when you could probably get two cars for $50,000. The point is that sometimes the decision making isn't great. So how do you try to safeguard your kids from making what you believe are inappropriate decisions? And that can all be handled through a will and through something called a trust. All right, so getting organized, financial accounts, things like that, debts, credit cards, legal documents. What do I do with this stuff? Now, we actually have an organizer that if you'd like it, just let Dana know and she'll get one out to you. And it's on paper, and we'll talk about why paper versus computer, and where should I put the stuff? Should it be in my safety deposit box? Should it be in the safe in the house? You know, should I hide it between the mattress and the box spring? How do we handle this stuff? So we'll talk about that. And legal documents. All right, so where are your records? And the answer probably is all over the place, right? So I've got some here, I've got some there. Now, nobody admitted to necessarily helping to clean out grandma or grandpa's house or something like that. But it's amazing the things that you discover as, you know, grandpa stashed something in his sock drawer, and there's something else that's in the closet, and there's this file cabinet, but now we gotta either drill it out or get a locksmith to open it up because the thing is locked. And I could have sworn they had a safety deposit box, but where is the thing? Now, because I, again, get to work with so many people, I can't tell you the number of clients that will reach out to me and say, Mom and Dad died, and, you know, they died on the farm, and Mom was the kind of person who every time she had some money, because she's a child of the Depression, she would buy a CD someplace. And this guy ended up calling to the banks that are within about a 25-mile radius of the farm, and almost every one had some CDs in it. Now, they won't give you a lot of information, but some of them will at least be nice enough to say, yeah, there is an account. You want to organize this stuff, or get your parents to get organized here. If, again, you want an organizer for them as opposed to just for yourself, just let us know. But get your parents to get organized here. Minnesota's a funny place, and maybe it's generalized, you know, it's the same all over the country. But people are unwilling to share information. You know, how many times have you heard, boy, my parents died, I couldn't believe all the money they had. You know, I thought, you know, because they always lived very simply and things like that, and all of a sudden there's $1.5 million sitting someplace, and this is not unusual, that they always did without because they wanted their children to have some dollars. The problem is they never told their children that they had this money or where this money was, etc. So is the money in the safety deposit box, or I'm sorry, any of your papers? You know, there's nothing wrong with a safety deposit box, but my problem with it is that in most cases you don't know where the key is, or the people who need the key don't know where the key is, or you need those papers at a time when you can't get access to that safety deposit box. So to me, that's not my first place where I'd like any of my stuff to go. A drawer, a filing cabinet, a shoebox. Actually, in my house, I'll tell you, I keep a lot of stuff kind of hidden in plain sight. I have it in an accordion, a plastic accordion file, and it's inside of a filing cabinet that I have that's not locked. And you'd really have to be motivated because it looks like nothing, but that's where I carry our long-term care policies, our life insurance policies, important documents like birth certificates and marriage certificates and things like that. I applied for a new driver's license about 6 months ago, and I wanted one of those upgraded Minnesota State driver's licenses. They wanted the hard copy of my Social Security card. Does everybody know where their Social Security card is? They don't want their number. But you got to start digging for that stuff. Get it organized, because your Social Security number or that card may need to be used as some form of identification. Is it on a computer? All right, so here's what I don't like about a computer. A computer, one, can get hacked. Two is, most of our computers are password protected. If you live with somebody, how many of those people know what your password is to get into that computer? All right, gee, passwords are everywhere. How do I get into your phone? How do I get into your computer? I left the country a little while back, and Jean goes, well, how do I pay the bills? And I pay bills directly off the computer. So, I gave her a tutorial on how it's done, and, she didn't even know the password to get into it. And those are huge issues. So I don't like it because it can get hacked. I don't like it because if it is on the computer, I don't know maybe where it is on the computer. Because we're very clever. We're going to maybe name it, the dog file or something like that. Well, how do I know that that's where the paperwork is and things like that? We have to communicate with each other. So what about online accounts like utility companies, credit card companies, our savings and checking accounts, our plans like our 457s, our 401ks, our health savings accounts, HSAs, our pensions, our life insurances? List those things, and that's what this organizer does that Dana can provide you. But, I have in my first job when I worked for ABC Company, I have a small 401k there. And at the City of Minnetonka, I have this set of benefits here, and this is the person you should be contacting in regards to those types of issues. We have X number of credit cards, and those credit cards, some might be just in my name, some might be in Jean's and my name, things like that. All of those things. And what are the passwords that you're using to get into those accounts, things like that. And I'm sorry if you're one of those secretive people, but this is really important information that's shared, or at least let somebody know that this is where I keep all of this stuff. So Jean, she's very organized. She has a little book that has all of her passwords in it and everything. The only problem is I have no idea where it is. So that doesn't do me a lot of good. If I really need a password and she's not home or something, naturally as a husband, I just call her up. But, do you want to start digging through all of these different cupboards and things like that, looking for the areas where this stuff is stashed? At least get yourself organized. Things that I'd like you to include: marriage certificates or divorce decrees, your mortgage, your loans, any credit card stuff. Take your credit cards, photocopy them, stick them in the file. Why is that a good thing? Because one, you've got a record of here's where the credit cards are. Two is if they're lost or stolen, you call up the credit card company. First, you got to find their number. So you've got it because you've copied that credit card. You can call them up. Here's the number, things like that. Just a thought. Financial accounts, my Social Security stuff, retirement plans, life insurances, brokerage accounts, property titles, business ownership. Some of you may own properties in other places. And think about these things. Let's say that for whatever reason you own a rental property, but when you bought it just in your name. Maybe it was before you were in the relationship or married, but all of a sudden it gets really messy. Client of mine, second parent just ended up dying. They inherited some substantial wealth, but their parents had a home in Florida, and for whatever reason, the attorney never had them notarize the sale. And apparently in Florida that is a requirement. And I don't know why it wasn't all done at the closing, etc. But they spent almost 18 months going through all the legal maneuvers necessary to prove that they have rights to this property, that they can sell this property. And like they told me, we ended up selling it for less than we could have gotten, just because we were tired of screwing around with this thing. And as soon as we got a cleared title to it, we just got rid of it. Don't put those other people into this position. So one of the things that you get through us is a financial dashboard. And this is really a nice piece. There's no charge for it. Certainly your Voya accounts are automatically updated in it all the time. But you can see on the one side, if you want, you can have it go to your checking account. You can have it get your credit card balances, things like that. It's just an electronic type of an organizer. It's good. I still like the paper, but this is very cool. At my office, we're rolling out a much more robust version of this. And boy, the people that are getting to utilize it really think that it's a very powerful, great thing to have. And it'll track everything from your frequent flyer points to your credit card balances to your mortgage and anything you want to put on it. So neat piece here. And when we do a plan for you, which we try to do for all of our clients, in that top left-hand corner where you see Voya, it actually shows the likelihood of success on your plan. So let's say it says 84%. It's updated every day. It's really a cool deal. So the personal financial dashboard, as I indicated, helps you document the stuff. On the more robust piece, it even has what we call a vault on it. So you can scan documents, put it inside there, and they're available. And if you want, and by the way, they're completely private, so we can't see it. But if you want us to look at something, you can put it in a shared file, and we get notified that you put something in there for us, and we take a look at it. So estate planning basics. Well, where there's a will, there's a way. Isn't that cute? Will is not anything more than your instructions as to how I want my stuff distributed. And yeah, there's a lot of legalese, and yes, you can write it yourself on a legal pad if you want and sign it, and in many cases it'll be accepted. If you get it notarized, then it will be accepted, those type of things. But the point here is that whether you do it yourself, and I did not bring a will because it was a little bit more substantial and I was tired of screwing around with the online stuff. I could have brought mine, but you need one. Your spouse, if you have one, needs one, etc. And unlike in the old days where everybody's worried about getting charged by the hour, everybody charges just a package price now. And I don't care whether you go to a suburban attorney or a downtown attorney. And by the way, I have 5 names that I'm more than willing to share with you. I get nothing out of it other than the satisfaction of knowing that you've taken care of that aspect of your life, that they're all very competitive. So my suggestion is, 1, go to somebody who that's all they do, the wills and the trusts. All right, you don't want a divorce lawyer. You don't want the trial lawyer. You want somebody who that's all they do all the time. And the value that they're bringing to the table is their ability to ask you insightful questions. Again, they've been there, they've done that. They're going to ask you things like, who do you want to do this? Well, are all the kids good? Should we set up, maybe you have a special needs situation, how do we set something up so that they're excluded from a legal standpoint, but still have the ability to access dollars? It can all be done. You just have to want to do it. And, I have a very prominent judge as a client. He will not get a will because he thinks it's just bad karma. What can I do? The guy is brilliant, but at the same time, he just won't do it. Don't fall into that position. He's got 3 kids, a very successful wife, just setting himself up for failure here. Everyone should consider having a will, then it's done your way. What's a trust? A trust is just a side document where you can, by the way, people have heard the term probate. So what's probate? It says Jeff's died. So they print that in the paper. And if you have a claim against Jeff, if you're, Macy's, And if Macy's, if Jeff owes you money, you've got 3 months to say how much he owes you, and then we're going to send the money out to take care of that debt. And after the 3 months, then the estate can be what we call settled, and everything gets distributed. So what does probate do? It's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily an expensive thing, but it is a time-consuming thing. If I put stuff into this trust, so think of it as you no longer own it, but this thing called a trust owns it, so we'll call it the Jeff Stein Living Trust. Well, all of that stuff that's in there doesn't have to go through probate. So you can have a separate set of rules. Let's say you're a grandparent and you love to travel and you want your grandchildren to be able to enjoy travel the way you did. So you said, you know something, every year, Grandma and Grandpa have said that there's $5,000 that's available for you to use to travel wherever you want to travel. And they'll go to somebody called a trustee, trustee. So this is the person who runs the trust. Says, I'm ready to take my trip. Here are my receipts. And you get reimbursed. And they think about you for as long as the money's there. That's kind of cool. Or I want to make sure that the grandkids or my kids can go to college. But I don't want them using the money for doing goofy things. So as long as the money is used for tuition or books or let's say food, those type of things, not a problem. But if it's going to be used for other things that you don't deem to be appropriate, then they won't be taken care of. But you can do all those things with a trust. So it's a very powerful thing. It helps you avoid probate. And it's not necessarily any more expensive. It's not going to help you save taxes because taxes are taxes. It just gives you a greater level of control. All right, who's going to speak for you when you can't? You know, I'm a pretty anal guy. And just to kind of tear back the curtain a little bit, so in many families, maybe one child is, just a superstar, and the other child has all kinds of problems. So how do we want to deal with this? Or you don't like your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law, and you don't want these monies used for anything but your grandchildren. That can all be done within your will. Now, there's some issues here. I just got this the other day, and so this guy says, high school graduates and mission trips. Well, high school seniors, for example, are about to graduate, and some may participate in a mission trip, a summer outing, things like that. All right, maybe, and I hope this doesn't happen, but somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody may have to go to the hospital. Now, if they're over 18 years old, how much access do you have to their information? The answer is none. All right, thank you, HIPAA. HIPAA is the Health Insurance, Health Privacy Act. So what you want to do is make sure that you have a power of attorney in place. And God, they're online, they're free. You can fill them out yourself. And they will allow you to say only for this period of time. So if you're worried that, my brother-in-law is going to steal all my money, you can just give them access for a certain period of time, etc. That you have, you can check the health portion here that says I have access to make decisions for my child, things like that, even though technically they're adults. So take advantage of that stuff. You can go to an attorney, they'll do it for you, they'll do it right. You can do it yourself. Just, Google Minnesota Power of Attorney, and you'll get the free forms up online. And you can just complete them. And it's so important. You need that power of attorney. Let's say that your checking account is in your name only. I see so many families today, husbands and wives, who do not share a checking account, but they each have individual checking accounts. Well, let's say that you're the one who's got the majority of the money in your checking account, but you're unable to handle that checking account at that point in time. Well, your wife takes your check and she signs it. It's not any good. She needs that power of attorney to be able to withdraw money, to be able to write checks, to be able to do those kind of things. You need to have that kind of stuff in place. It only makes a difference when that occurs. Nobody knows when it's going to occur, but at some point, I think we all know situations where there's one individual within a couple who is no longer able to do those type of things. All right, healthcare proxies and in the will. All right, so every time you get a will done, they better be doing a healthcare directive for you. So here's off of the internet a boilerplate healthcare directive. What's it saying? It's saying that if I can't speak for myself, how much care do I want provided to me? So if, I am just, the doctors say the prognosis is not good, but your daughter says, I know Dad would want us to fight for him. But your wife is saying, you know something, we've had a lot of conversations, and I don't know Dad would not want to be left like this, that he would like to be able to, if he's going to die with dignity, we'll say. So we'll let nature take its course. We just want to make sure he stays comfortable. Do you want to put your family or whoever these debating people are, parents and spouse, children, making these decisions? The joke was, I know Jeff would pull the plug, thanks. But because that's just my mindset, that I hate seeing people having to suffer things like that. And other family members or individuals who say, whatever it takes. I just went through a situation, and it wasn't me, but clients of ours, where, and this is a religious issue, where one daughter married somebody, and they became very, very, very religious. And the other daughter just maintained her continued religious affiliation, etc. Well, the one daughter says, our religion says is that we need to take every measure possible to keep this person alive. So Dad goes from assisted living, very successful dentist, goes from assisted living to a nursing home to deep into Alzheimer's to unconscious. By the way, Alzheimer's won't kill you. It's everything else that happens because of it. This gentleman was on a respirator for approximately 8 years. All right? And the stories that we would get from these clients would be, we just heard from Methodists, they're going to kick him out because this daughter isn't willing to take any steps to allow Dad to just pass. My goodness. And just to maybe take it to a different level, so as a successful dentist, he'd accumulated some wealth. What do you think it costs to keep somebody in that situation over all these years? So completely depleted everything that he'd wanted to pass on to his children, etc. I'm telling you, that healthcare directive is so important. Please, 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 either do it yourself or have somebody do it for you. And after you do it, don't lock it in a drawer. You want to give it to your doctor so that your doctor knows what your wishes are. And if any of you have gone into the hospital or have had a friend or a parent go into the hospital, you know they ask you to have a health care directive in place. This is not a do not resuscitate type of a situation. This is simply stating what I want to have happen in these particular circumstances. Even if your will says something different, your beneficiary designation rules all. All right? So, husband and wife, husband divorces the wife. This guy was a client of mine for 30-some years. Very, very sharp guy, but had divorced his wife. Wife was on medical assistance, and she just inherited $250,000 from this life insurance policy, even though they hadn't been married for 5 years. The wife can't even take the money, because if she does, it gets her off of medical assistance. And so it's a double whammy. And really, she doesn't want it. The kids need the money. So the point is that if this had been looked at and dealt with, we would be in such a better situation because of it. Now, in the end, the kids get the money, But the point is, how much did it cost them? How much aggravation did they have to go through the courts and to get the proper documentations, and to maybe go back to the second wife and, to talk about these type of situations and things like that? Why do you want to put family members into that type of a circumstance? Take care of these things. Let's really be adults about this. Review how your assets are titled. This is a whole workshop that we put on for people where I bring in an attorney, and it's the old, well, the kids love the cabin, so we're going to put the kids on the deed with the cabin, so when we die, it's just going to pass to them. But then Johnny gets into a car accident, and he's hurt some people very badly in this car accident, and his insurance only covers so much. Oh, look, Johnny owns a cabin. Well, of course he doesn't own the cabin. It's mom and dad's cabin. No, Johnny owns the cabin. And the cabin now belongs to the courts, which will sell the cabin and use the proceeds to take care of as much of this claim as possible. This titling to try to play these little games and things like that, at least know what the ramifications might be here. If Johnny is on the title and Johnny wants to sell the cabin, Johnny can sell the cabin. Know that these things can happen. So individual account, the account's in your name alone, how's it going to pass? Your will's going to pass. Survivorship, each owns 100%. What does that mean? That if I die, Gina's automatically still the remainder owner. That's how most people generally title their homes, etc. The surviving joint tenant, and it might not be your wife, it may be your, somebody may have borrowed you the money for the house, and as collateral, they get the house if you die or when you die. Tenants in common, so each owner has a stated percentage. I don't know how you divide up bathrooms and things like that, but generally what that means is that the house has got to be sold, and then the proceeds are divided in those percentages that we talked about. Life insurance gives heirs a tax-free benefit. Tax-free? Well, if we just buy regular life insurance and we use the death benefit, that death benefit is income tax-free. It's very powerful. So a lot of people say, I don't like life insurance. Well, you do if you need the money. If you want to make sure that upon your death, upon my death, for example, I want to make sure there's enough money for Jean to bury me, to continue living the lifestyle that she wants to live, etc. And some of you may have accumulated enough regular wealth so it doesn't matter. But life insurance is a very inexpensive way to make sure that maybe your kids get to go to college, if that's what you want them to do, or, and by the way, you don't have to name your kids as beneficiaries. I'm just saying that it creates an instant pot of money. So creating your plan, estate planning basics, well, you want it done right. That doesn't mean you can't do it yourself. I want to emphasize that again. I'm not trying to push you to a professional. I'm just saying that I would rather have somebody do what they do all the time and allow me to do what I do well. It's, how many of you have been in a situation where you hate cutting the grass or some activity like that, and all you do is get yelled at, or the city puts a notice up saying, if you don't cut your grass, we're cutting your grass. But the bottom line is that you want these things to happen the way you want, and if you don't like doing it, you're not going to do the will yourself. So go to somebody who's going to do it for you, get it done, have it done right, and then all these things that we've talked about are going to be less likely to happen. That healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, it's so important. Get it done. You got kids that you want to have some ability to, have some access to. They're still single, 25, 30 years old, not unusual today, and something might happen to them. You are frozen out. You are no different than anybody else in that hospital. They're not going to give you any information. So make sure those things are taken care of. Update your beneficiaries. We started with that. So important. I don't want you on the phone with me saying, am I the beneficiary for my spouse's program here? I go, you'll know right away that it might be no when I say, I can't tell you that, because that's the first sign. I just had a wonderful client, unfortunately, die down in Florida. The brother-in-law calls me up because they were all together in this condo that they'd rented, and he says, well, we don't even know what she had. Oh my God. So they're digging all over the place. Who are the beneficiaries? What's going on? We're doing everything we can to try to help them, but we can't give them any information. It's a terrible situation if you have not set yourself up for some success here. Make sure everything is titled the way you want it to be titled. Remember that mortgage, your life insurance, your vehicle, things like that, and the importance of life insurance. Check on this annually, all right? Whether you just on Outlook have it be a recurring reminder, or you work off a paper and it says, every 1st of May I'm calling Jeff, I'm calling Dana to see what's going on with all my stuff here. But take care of stuff like that. Yeah, there we go. Create your plan. So is it going to be simple? Is it going to be complex? Each of us is different. So each of our plans will reflect where we are in life and what we've got going on. Client in the other day, I had him sit down with our accountant, and they have a charitable trust that they've put together, so a foundation. They have rental properties, things like that. Fairly complex, right? So it's a little bit more of a complex type of a will trust situation. Simple, you know, I'm single and I rent an apartment and I've got my car and I've got my retirement plans and things like that. Not very complicated. Maybe even do it yourself. But know that there are all kinds of degrees of complexity, and they all aren't complex and they all aren't simple. We want it so it's optimized to you. I'm going to say get some help, but again, it's up to you. Do you have children? I would recommend getting help. Is it a blended family? Second marriages, things like that? I'd recommend getting help. Financial situation is complex. I'd like to have somebody help me navigate that. Interested in philanthropy? Another client. Believe it or not, you probably haven't heard this word lately. Her dad was a lumber baron in Michigan, all right? Significant wealth. So he took a good chunk of that wealth and put it into a charitable foundation. And he talked to the kids before he died, and he said, here's the deal. And this is all written down, it's, you know, so it's all legal. He said, this money is set aside, but the only way it's ever going to be distributed is if all of you get together once a year, and I don't care where it's at, you can take funds from the charitable trust to pay your transportation, etc., to get to wherever you're going. But as a family, I want you all coming back together to make these decisions on an annual basis as to who we're distributing that year's charitable contributions to. And these people are incredibly philanthropic. She was just in the other day, and she's going off to Zambia with Christian Relief to look at some different places that they might be contributing money to and things like that. Just how cool is that to know that you're bringing your family back together every year, which is, as maybe some of you know, gets more and more difficult as people spread out around the country, around the world. But they, once a year, come back together to make really great decisions about doing nice things. And have more than one property, I'd also be on top of that. So what's the maximum you can leave to your spouse? They get it all. That's a good thing, you know? It's seamless. But after that, it gets a little more complicated. And in some cases, we don't want the spouse to receive it all. Maybe it's a second spouse or things like that. So get help. Touch base with us. We can help you. We're here to help. We're here to help you explore your options and your needs. And, you know, the process is rather simple. We talk. We look up ideas. We design things. We bring in the pros. We implement. We manage. And we do this on a regular basis. So now's the time, from a peace of mind standpoint, to make sure loved ones are taken care of. This isn't going to make you money. This is going to you do this because you love somebody or some group. You know, we can do the financial planning, the holistic planning, so that's everything. And for sure, take the baby steps, get into things like deferred comp, etc. That's where it's at. Any questions for me? I'm sorry I was so long-winded, but it's a great topic. And I'm so glad that you felt like you wanted to invest a few minutes today to help make you smarter about this, or at least I hope you became smarter because of it. Any questions? Well, Dana and I will be here, so please don't hesitate to stop in up here and say hi, and if you have an individual question. And Dana will be here for the rest of the day, so I believe there's a sign-up sheet if you'd like to see her at any particular time, and we'll take it from there. But thank you very much.